Welcome one and all to our part 2 of the Prairie Fire SOG discussions. And we have with us 4 distinguished SOG veterans and a 5th one on his way in traffic. You can type in chat as before, and we'll filter through your questions and see what we can ask to the veterans. We've got a fairly full lineup of questions that you've already submitted through Discord, and thank you all for those. Yeah, I guess we're going to get going. So we'll start with some introductions. I'll quickly introduce Sam, who's voice actor for Wild Carrot and El Cid in the game. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm always getting ones mixed up. You're not Tilt, are you?
Nope. You got it right, Rob.
Yeah. Jackson is Tilt, and he's in the audience. And then, guys, could I ask you to introduce yourselves? We'll start with Ken.
Ken Bowra. I was a 1-0 RT Idaho, RT Sidewinder.
Thank you. And Jim?
Yes, my name is Jim Shorten. My name in Vietnam was Jim Jones. I was adopted a name of Jones, and I switched back to Shorten after I got out. But I was the 1-0 of RT Delaware and RT Illinois. And I served in the Navy, the Army, Special Forces, Air Force Pararescue.
Thank you, Jim. And Don?
I'm Don Haase, and I was a crew chief in the 195th Assault Helicopter Company. And we supported Delta, Sigma, Omega projects and CCS, among other units in Vietnam.
Thank you, Don. And over to you, Dick.
I'm Dick Thompson. I was 1-1 with RT Alabama, 1-0 with Michigan, and 1-0 with Virginia.
Thank you, sir. Right. So our ice-breaking question tonight is, or this afternoon for you guys, is how did you each come by your code name? And I guess if we go in the same order as before, that'll probably keep things smooth.
Right. El Cid, and that had kind of picked up back a long time ago. And actually, when I was attending the Citadel and had carried on, it was just an easy way people associated. No relationship to Charlton Heston.
That was my original guess.
I would take credit for that.
And is it, how does El Cid relate to the Citadel? Is the Citadel's in
as in kind of a unofficial nickname, if you would, and nothing related officially to the institution. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And Jim?
Yes, when I was in training group, a guy drew a picture, and he had me looking like a wild man with my bright red hair, and he called me the Wild Carrot. So when I went to CCC, they asked us to get code names, and I had a hard time trying to figure out which name to use. So I just said, just call me the Wild Carrot. But it was mainly because I had bright red hair.
Don, do you know where the Ghost Riders came from?
I think just it was a popular song at the time, and we all enjoyed it. And we kind of liked the idea of flying through the air of the Vietnam combat zone as ghosts. And, of course, all of the havoc that the Ghost Riders brought on the world.
Okay, and thank you. And how about you, Dick?
When I got to CCN, we had to pick our names. I wanted Ranger. Ranger was already gone. So I scanned the list, saw Dynamite, and I thought, well, I've blown up a lot of things in my time already, and I like explosives and demolition, so it'll probably fit well with me. So I picked that one.
That's excellent. Thank you, Dick. So we've just had enter the building. John Stryker Meyer is now with us. Have we got Como with you, John?
I think so.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Lima Charlie. Excellent. So for the audience, this is John Stryker Meyer, and I guess I could introduce you as a former 1-0 of RT Idaho, and you served at CCN, been with the project for a couple of years with us, and you also appear in the game as a character, along with Wild Carrot and El Cid here. John, we were just talking about how you guys got your code names. Would you care to explain to us how you came about yours?
Well, they gave me a code name, which I forgot, and everybody just called me Tilt. So that's the long and the short on that. So I couldn't tell you what my real code name was in the SOG log, but the nickname kind of stuck, and that worked.
I kind of read, I'm not sure whose book it was, if it might have been Lynn's book, that it was something to do with the way you tilted your head.
Indeed, that could be it too, or the way we tilted pinball machines, or all of the above.
So it's still a legendary mystery then.
Indeed,
Right.
It's more fun that way.
Yeah, keep the mystique going. So I guess I was asking the guys earlier today, the veterans, to come up with questions for each other, and Ken came up with one for me, so I'll cue you in on that one.
Right. Rob, question is, how did you first learn of MACV SOG, the organization, the missions, which then, how did that lead you to where we are today?
Yeah, okay. And a good question, because I guess when I was about 15, I started watching the spate of Vietnam War movies that came out in the 80s, me being just a spring chicken here. And of course, I knew nothing about SOG, and why would anyone know? It was all still top secret at that point. And as time went on, saw other films, still no SOG. I think Tour of Duty, the TV show, had a bit of SOG in it, but I never made it that far in the show. So I hadn't covered it then. Played the game Viet Cong, which was developed by a guy called Jarrett Collar, who just recently left Bohemia for another company. And we got to meet him, which was great because it was an amazing game. So that's what got me into playing Vietnam War games. And then I found the Unsung Mod team and worked with them for about 7 years. And they've been already modding for about 8 years and making Vietnam War stories in video games. And we were doing all this for free as a hobby. You know, this is what we do. But still no SOG really. And then Chris, who's one of our Chris Schelling's one of our terrain designers, and he basically made some SOG units, and he gave them to me to put in game. And I looked at them, and I thought, you know, this is weird. You know, who are these guys? Because all the gear is completely different to what I'd made. You know, I'd worked on special forces units and infantry and Marines and force recon and LURPS and ARVN and LLDB and, you know, SIG and the whole lot. But I'd never seen SOG, which is quite crazy, really. And that's when I started reading. So I think I picked up Lynn Black's book first, and then worked my way through all of Tilt's books. And then I think We Few as well, Nick Brockhausen, and bit by bit I've been rereading them over and over. So that was, you know, once you kind of realize how special the mission you guys did was, you know, the odds you were up against, the deep relationships with the indigenous troops, all of those factors really struck a chord in me. You know, it wasn't the typical US infantry in Vietnam, you know, through the draft, with the tensions in the platoons, the things we'd seen in the Hollywood movies. You know, none of that was evident in anything that I've ever read in any of the SOG books, and it was just so different, and it was quite an eye opener to see just a really balanced and true account of men at war, which didn't have the kind of mythology that you get in a lot of the modern movies, and you know, that even going back to Apocalypse Now, which isn't that modern, but it's still very mythologized. And it's just a shame that I think that this stuff hasn't been done. It hasn't been done in Hollywood. It hasn't been done in TV or film. And here we are. So this was why we focused on SOG in this video game, was to begin telling that story and sort of seeing where we could go with it, you know.
How many languages now did you say that you're translating into? And internationally, what kind of coverage do you have at this time?
So I think we're selling into a kind of captive market of 6.5 million owners of Armour 3. And then beyond that, aiming for, if we can get another million people playing it, that would be great. So in terms of how many units we ship, we've got no idea what it'll be. But that's the kind of reach of the materials. When the trailer comes out, we'll be looking for 4 or 5 million views on that. So, it's getting the message out, and that'll be worldwide. In terms of languages, I think we cover 85% of the world's gamers in terms of the choice of languages we're translating into, and that's, I could reel them off, but I think it's 8 main languages, and then we're doing 4 extra. So it's I think it's 12 languages in total. And quite importantly, we're covering Korean because there's a big fan base in Korea because they've got relatives, uncles and grandfathers who served in Vietnam.
And someday, somewhere in Vietnam, we may have some veterans logging on.
Yeah, we've got Nguyen in the audience, who's one of the team members who's helped us with a lot of the history from Vietnam, and he reads an enormous amount of material from the NVA perspective, and he's been an absolutely fantastic resource putting us right where we've made errors along the way, and he's been brilliant. So, and then we have our voice actors as well who've worked with us. We haven't found anybody from the NVA to come and work with us directly, but I'm sure it's only a matter of time. Moving on and straight into this one then, really thinking about the role of SOG. How effective do you think the work of SOG was in tackling the Ho Chi Minh Trail?
I was going to say, we should go counterclockwise. Again, I think everyone has a different perspective from the times they were there. But again, it was very localized war, on my part, and I think everyone else's, not to really see what the big picture was. But I think based on the amount of North Vietnamese troops that were being tied up with SOG and SOG missions to counter, that significant in that role, I think, for airstrikes, for supplies coming down on units, it was significant. And intelligence that could be further exploited, if you would, with other missions that was picked up. So I think it was very significant. And I think the presidential unit citation that John Plaster had worked so hard on that was finally awarded outlines, I think, the significance of the missions much better than I could even start to begin to say.
And dive in, guys, if you'd like to.
Well, if you like, Rob, we also have the unknown impacts. Because, for example, CIA told us, do the wiretaps. Then we'll get your tapes, we'll amplify it 100 times, and we will get intel off of that. Now, we were told that they had good intel on occasions, but we turn the tape in, you never hear anything back. Same thing for film. We would take photographs. I can remember, particularly in Cambodia, where we're right along Highway 31 and thick vegetation. Here's the highway. You stick the camera right up, take pictures of the truck going by. Then later we got really brave, put the camera out, and when the trucks came by, we had 2 rolls of film. Turned it in, not a peep back, not a thank you or a go away, or you try again, nothing. So there's a couple of things like that. And even then, when you put down troop movements, you report it, and then you may or may not hear about it. So that's my 3 quick little thoughts.
Thank you, Till.
One of the things that I learned, which I thought was pretty fascinating, is that when we're walking around the jungle, you might find a little piece of plastic from poncho or something of that nature, or anything laying around. And what they do is if another team picked up another piece of it elsewhere, they can actually track the movement from where the pieces are being picked up, because they actually knew where that material was being made and who was actually issued it. And they can follow their movements, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah.
That is.
I guess from an OPSEC point of view, they wouldn't want you to know what they're doing with the intelligence that you're gathering in case you're captured.
If I could add and just jump ahead of the other guys for a minute, Tilt sparked something in my memory. One mission, what we were doing was dropping off bogus letters that had allegedly by North Vietnamese soldiers, and it was a PSYOPs mission. Basically, these were all written perfectly to be read so it looked like it's from an NVA soldier who was complaining about this or that, or from someone back in Hanoi saying how terrible it is and all this. And then they would be wrapped up in a piece of plastic and tied with a piece of string, and we would drop those out in our area, just a couple, and with the hopes that someone would pick it up. And it was just a play on them and a PSYOPs. And that's something we have no idea whatever the result with the impact was on the NVA soldier or who he's eventually getting back home.
And I think to piggyback on that is the example of Eldest Son, where the explosive ammunition was put out. And that, I think we discovered that there was an impact from that operation. So all of the operations should have had some kind of effect. We'll just never know what it was because that information is buried deep in Hanoi's archives and the archives of the U.S. government. It costs thousands and thousands of dollars to dig it out.
Yeah, I imagine in the future, at some point, historians will reevaluate the work that was done by SOG and the CIA in the Southeast Asian wars, and you'll probably get a more objective opinion on it. I think it might have been John Plaster that was put in his book that he thought you guys had almost won the war by 68, 69. Just because of the sheer amount of damage you were doing to the enemy infrastructure. I'm not sure, what you feel about that.
I think we did a lot, and like everyone said, you really don't know how much, but I found it satisfying to see, what my team was doing, to see the burning vehicles, to see troops being destroyed, bridges being destroyed. I knew that had to be having an impact, overall somewhere. So, I felt pretty good every time we did something like that.
Okay, thank you, Dick. Okay, and let's go on to another question. Here's one from one of our teammates, Whiplash, and he's a paratrooper. He's asking what particular characteristics were required by a soldier to be a 1-0 in and out of combat.
You have to be crazy.
That's a prerequisite.
Yeah.
If you take a look at, if you just look at the group here, you're not saying anybody's old, but if you take that back to the late 60s of what age we were then, there was a time when it was believed that our prefrontal cortexes were pretty well developed by the time you were, 19, 20 years old. Since then, we've discovered it's more like 29 or 30. So all of us were still at that state of where we didn't have the risk aversion. We didn't think we could necessarily be killed. If you told us to take a hill or whatever, we would go do it because we were not quite smart enough at that point, to say no. And the older guys worked at the staff, because they were older, smarter, and they had deserved to be up there while the young ones ran around out there acting crazy. So, yeah, I can identify with that.
When we went through a combo training, we had guys who've been to Vietnam 2 or 3 tours of duty, all with A camps. And their word of advice to us was, after your in-country training, somebody's going to come out and ask for volunteers for a project. Don't do it because it's a high casualty rate. And
And here we are.
Here we are.
and do you think that was, in a way, I mean, indirectly, a sort of subtle recruitment tool?
No, this is just our instructors just being kind to us, saying, hey, go over and get a tour of duty under your belt first. You guys are young and green. Learn what the scene is there, customs, and work at an A camp. And then if you want to think about a project where a lot of people are dying, then go ahead. But, you know, by that time, it all happened at the end of our in-country training. The guy came out. The movie had been out. We just saw the movie, The Green Berets. So we said, what would the Duke do? And the rest is history.
There's, you guys have a special capability, and you've obviously been very, very well trained by the US military. And I think that's a big part of answering the question, you know, but you guys are too humble to say it. But you have to be Superman to be in SOG.
Well, I don't think any of us thought of it that way, but we should just go around, let Jim start, and then come back with a quick, everybody else from their how they landed with that 1-0 slot.
Okay, I'll go on that one. I had 22 months in Vietnam with the Navy in Da Nang, Vietnam, before when I came back and went in the Army. So I was 23 when I went into SOG. I think that's 23. And I already had about 8 or 9 months on an A team. So I had a whole bunch of missions because I love going out in the field. But when I got to SOG on RT Delaware, I was the 1-1 assistant team leader. And we ran one mission, and then Dan Sturr was 1-0, and he decided he had enough, and he decided to get out of recon. And so the next day, the first sergeant walked across the compound and goes, hey, Jim, how would you like to be the 1-0 of RT Delaware? And I'm going, huh? I've only been on one mission. and he goes, well, we feel that you're ready. And being young, dumb, and whatever, you know, I said, okay, I'll give it a shot. But I remember flying out and saying to myself, you know, what am I doing here? You know, I got all these lives under my belt here. You know, I got to watch out for them, make sure they do. But a lot of SOG guys feel the same way. But anyway, so I went ahead and took the position and stayed on it. And, you know, I ran a few missions, a few bright light missions with them and stuff. So, but the main thing to be a 1-0 is you've really got to know how to call an aircraft, how to, you know, you got to be able to talk to the aircraft above and direct fire and that sort of thing, and then get your team out of there and know what you're doing on the ground. You got to make sure that you direct your team in a proper manner so they're the least amount of casualties, and hopefully no one gets hurt. So that's the biggest thing for me, to be a 1-0. And I did have that, but I just didn't really feel like I was qualified. But I guess, what are you going to do? And as for going into CNC, when I was in training group, you know, like Tilt was saying, you know, the instructors would say, don't go to CNC. And I'm going, why? And he goes, well, you'll get yourself killed. You go to CNC. I remember Worley telling me that. And I said, well, you know, the more people tell me not to go to see if because you get killed, the more I want to go to see if I get killed. So that kind of sums it up as being crazy. And as for age, my 1-1 was almost 15 years older than me. On RT Delaware. He served in the Second World War, the Korean War, in Vietnam. He had 7.5 years of combat service. So his name was Homer Hungerford. And I wanted Homer mainly because of his experience. And he could still run with us and carry on. So I was glad to have him on the team.
I think Tilt and Jim touched on all the right points. For me, it was a learning experience. It was wanting to be there. But it was being very fortunate to work with some great soldiers, to learn from guys who had been there for a long time, a lot of experience, and making sure that everything was being done right and to set you up for success as best as they could. Equally important was the indigenous team members and the experience that they had. It was so important to listen, to learn from them, and defer when it was time on the ground, but make the final decisions. And I go with Idaho and Tilt and Quan and again, the experience level there was incredible. And watching them in action and then taking it and making the decisions, calling in the airstrikes or whatever had to be done. But it was a wealth of experience from other individuals. I mean, I can rattle off a half a dozen names right away that made sure that they did their very best to help me. And occasionally they would strap hang with you to be in Overwatch and to make sure you do good. Again, as one of them said, you're one of my pups. I'm going to make sure you do good. Not a team mascot, but mission prep was incredible, with people coming out of their way, doing your analysis, helping you with the analysis of your target folders, everything from different elevations on where you could be spotted by the NVAs during your route of movement. So I give, to me, being a 1-0, successful 1-0, was listening to other folks and having those great NCOs and Indigenous team members help.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you, Ken. So you've actually answered one of my next questions, which was all about what did you learn from your teammates? And I think you covered that one pretty well. I wanted to ask Dick a question. Because you ran on teams where you were the only American, is that right?
Yeah.
And how did that work? Were you doing that a lot of the time where you were kind of following the 0-1, or were you always directly leading?
I was leading when I was, running teams by myself. Yeah, and it, to some degree, I think Jim mentioned it earlier about as a 1-0 feeling, you have responsibility for all these lives that are with you. And particularly the American lives. So, I asked to be the only guy, if that was okay. So I ran a lot of missions like that. I actually volunteered, and Tilt can relate to this, but meeting with Chief SOG and talking about the McGill Pass mission, I finally, at the end of our conversation on that, said, well, just send me. Don't send the whole team, because I know there are people out there. Just send me. I can hide by myself. I can send the information back. And he had some colorful comments to make about that. He thought I was being facetious or smart aleck or something. So I tried to talk Dick Meadows into that when he was the recon CO. I finally did, but then the camp commander disapproved it. So, but I thought, if I don't have anyone with me, then I don't have to worry about them. I can focus on me. I'll go do what I need to do. I mean, I wouldn't go out and track down a 500-man battalion and attack them by myself. But if it was more of a recon focus, let's go out and get some information and bring it back in. And I told Meadows, I said, so what do you got to lose? If they get me, you've lost one crazy recon guy. You didn't lose a whole team. So, and I knew he would do it. So, but anyway, it took a little while, but, and I did get to go on one by myself, but that's another story.
Yeah, that's the R&R story.
Yeah.
and that you can hear on the Jocko podcast in great detail.
Yeah, that I didn't mention it a while ago, but there was one other team that I was the 1-0 of, and that was RT Dynamite on that one mission. Since I was the only person on the team, I guess I was the 1-0.
All right, question from Dolly 897. And the question is, in your downtime on camp, what shenanigans did the team get up to?
Well, in our early days, we were so busy. Only thing there was so much training that by the time we got back to the base at night, they were worn out. They would eat and then get ready for the next day. I mean, there was a few months, like I arrived in 68, and then we were under intense training through June into July. Then we had some monsoons in between, filled a lot of sandbags. And when we got to CCN, things changed a little. We had volleyball, and nothing too outrageous because, we knew that there was missions coming up. And I think other teams have a whole lot better stories than mine. Kind of boring, but, you had to be ready. And the training never ended.
There's an article coming out, I think, next month in the new magazine called Pucker Factor. Lynn Black and I put together what we call Black Dynamite hunting expeditions. And so what we would do between missions, and then, like Tilt was saying, it was after we got to CCN, and it was actually later in the year at CCN where our time started to overlap. And, Lynn preferred to have a fast schedule. He didn't like to sit around and think about what almost happened last time or what could have happened. He liked to, let's go do the next one. So I was kind of that way too. I wanted to have a fast turnover. So in between missions, we'd take a few members from each of our teams, and we'd go out in the local area and conduct some local operations for fun and to keep us sharp. It's always good to have some live fire target shooting back at you just to keep you on your toes. So, but I won't tell you the whole story because it's pretty short in the article coming up, but interesting.
Did you get to use his Claymore ambush with the C4?
I tried that. It's in the book that you'll be seeing shortly. But we actually did some ambushes. We started with the Sten guns with the integrated silencer on it.
Right.
So we just used those. So there, people in camp didn't even hear us firing in the ambush. And we got that to working, and we had a discussion over some philosophical nectar one night in the lounge. And we thought, well, if you could do it with a Sten gun, why don't we use our 22 pistols? If each team member has one of those pistols, if you won't hear anything. You just have to shoot them more times, but in the end, you'll be the winner. So we got that working pretty well, and then we started sharing some of that with other teams and saying, if you need to take someone out quietly on a prisoner snatch or something like that, I mean, these things will work. I mean, they will kill you.
That's the preferred hit weapon for the mob.
Yeah,
it works.
So I don't know if that falls under shenanigan or not, but it was an interesting experience.
Maybe we call that a semi-shenanigan, Rob.
Yeah, I think if people really want to hear the shenanigans, they've got to read Nick Brockhausen's book.
Oh my God, yes.
I can touch a little bit on this too. I suppose that. But we like Tilt was saying, we there wasn't very much downtime. We had a lot of training. We had what's called the yard range, and we used to go up there and train all day long as much as we could. Then we'd have fun, just throwing grenades, stuff like that. Have a free for all. Then we'd come on back, and a lot of the guys would just kick back and relax. I would go to the club, maybe have we had a little club on the compound. But we had some cat houses down outside the fence. So I guess for shenanigans, I'd go down there and have a few drinks and get laid and that sort of thing, and then come on back. But that was pretty much the extent of it, because and if you weren't going out on a mission, a lot of times you were doing perimeter defense. You'd get up on the berm and just sit there with the berms And they had these lights that shined out, so you couldn't see in the camp. All you could see was the lights. And we'd sit up there with 22s, and we'd used to shoot the rats as they were running around out in the ground. So, the silenced 22s that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Standards. But, that's pretty much it.
Well, I might add that the height of the aircrew shenanigans was taken, and we'd fly Colonel Drake around to meet with different district chiefs and officers. And so at lunchtime, we'd talk him into telling we had a slight maintenance problem and needed to go back to plantation, get some parts, and it'd take us about an hour or two. And he'd say, okay. And then we'd fly down to the Navy mess hall at Na Bay, which had the best food in Vietnam, and eat lunch, and then go back and pick him up and finish our mission running him around. And then a couple of times we had occasion where we needed to send a slick out deer hunting so we could get some meat for a company party, and that kind of thing. Other than that, we didn't have much time. We had to make it up as we went because it was standby or we were doing maintenance when we weren't flying.
Yeah, deer hunting is one of the King Bee favorite tricks. They would get deer or anything, they shoot it and then bring it back.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's where I learned that hunting out of a helicopter really works. Really works.
What do you use, the 60 for that or what?
Yeah.
Wow. That's got to be.
Yeah, just a short burst,
coming from a deer hunting family, what I'm used to is sitting in a tree for hours on end. That's got to be a different experience coming in a helicopter shooting a machine gun at them.
You need to get some tracers flying and then work it in on them, and then shut it off so you didn't shoot the meat up too bad.
I guess so, and good practice too. All right, gentlemen, I'm gonna move on to section 2 here. I want to cover as many people's questions as I can, but just for time's sake, we might not get to a couple of them, but I'm sure we'll have opportunities in the future to work on some of these others as well. So my next question is, can you tell us about a memorable mission, a time when, or a moment when maybe you thought your team was in deep trouble?
I've got one. I wasn't in trouble, but I think this is one that should be covered. We had a team that was in hot pursuit, and they could only whisper or key the mic to communicate with us. And the 1-0 wanted airstrikes right on their position. And the Air Force F-4 pilot refused to do it because they were too close. And the 1-0 pleading back and forth with him to do it. If you don't bomb our position, we'll be dead. And so finally the F-4 pilot relented and bombed their position, dropped 500-pound bombs on them. And the team survived, had a few casualties, but then we were able to go in and extract them and get them out of harm's way successfully.
Don, I seem to remember you saying you were on the radio and you could hear them talking, shouting out. You could hear the enemy shouting to them. That is correct, Rob. You could hear the Vietnamese voices in the background when he would key the mic to, break squelch to communicate with us. One's yes, two's no, and we'd ask them a question, and then when they'd break squelch, or when he was pleading with the pilot to drop bombs on him, you could hear Vietnamese voices in the background. And that wasn't too uncommon. That wasn't the only mission that happened on. It was quite common to hear voices. The team was, in that close proximity to the enemy looking for them.
You heard NVA voices on your radio in your chopper?
Yeah.
Get out.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah, they were, and like I say, the team was surrounded by them, and they were telling them to come out. GI, you come out, we kill you quickly.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. But yeah, we did on occasion. You could hear the communication with them walking around them.
And I guess they got a 500-pound surprise.
Yeah. Well, and down in our area, the terrain was flat enough. I mean, once the team was compromised, they just mass troops around them and try to overrun them, before we could get them out of there. And it was a quite common tactic until I think you ran into that one Thanksgiving Day.
Oh, yeah.
68 down in our AO.
Indeed. Welcome to Cambodia. That's where I met Colonel Drake. He was quite a character. He couldn't believe an E4 would be a 1-0.
Yeah, he had a lot of old school prejudices.
Yeah. Did anybody else have
that too? When they had the North Vietnamese several times during the October 5th mission, they said "Chu Hoi," and they returned the "Chu Hoi" message with gunfire.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, Ken. Go ahead.
No. I was just nodding with you, reflecting back. So true. It was a few years. I just drifted back a few years.
Yeah. Well, in our case, there are times when there were firefights. We knew we killed or hurt or wounded a lot of men, and we had never heard a word. I mean, in 70, we had Spectre. We went through 3 or 4 Spectres in one night, and they came at us all night. And we know when we got pulled out in the morning, there was blood trails everywhere. And they came in and pulled back their dead or wounded. We never heard one voice anywhere, which to me, this day is still startling. Stoic beyond comparison, but they were dedicated.
Yeah.
I'm sure Dick's got a better story than that. Come on, Dick.
Well, it was very early in the morning, very dark, and we heard the NVA approaching us. And it didn't take long to figure out it was a large group. It had to be at least a platoon-sized group that was coming after us. And at that time, we had just gotten the little transponders that you could control Spectre with. You turn the transponder on and just tell him how far away from that transponder do you want them to shoot. So, we don't want to give our position away. So we turned on the transponder, gave him a distance and everything. And we could hear them screaming as the bullets were hitting them. They were getting ripped apart. And it was a large force, but it didn't take long to quieten down. So we laid there the rest of the night waiting on something to happen. When it got daylight, we got up to leave, and we started making our way out. And we started seeing rock apes. And there were monkeys, laying all over the place, blowing apart. And it was a big group of monkeys that were coming after us, and it wasn't NVA. So we had wiped out, about 40 rock apes in the report, and we told them 40 KIA. We just didn't say what they were, but Spectre works well on monkeys too.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't know sometimes.
Poor monkeys.
Just don't tell Peter.
Yeah. they were probably collaborating with the NVA, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, they're all commies anyway, so
That's right.
Just don't let Ken and Frank near them, because we've seen what you guys do to monkeys.
Yeah.
Well, you know, they shouldn't monkey around in a free fire zone.
Ooh.
Well, you know,
Okay.
there were teams that were actually overrun by, you know, the rock apes. Come through, take your rucksack, take your weapon, anything they could grab as they would come running over your perimeter. They could be vicious.
Wow.
And I'm sure they were NBA trained.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
True story. One of my friends was in exact same situation, and they took everything, and then next thing, Rock Ape threw back a can of ham and limas. Even though Rock Ape didn't like ham and limas, he said to this day.
That speaks to their intelligence.
Yeah, they're not dumb. They're not dumb.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, we were in Echo 4. We got overrun by monkeys, but just monkeys, and they were above us. And we were all lined up, pins pulled, ready to go, and it was monkeys. Fortunately, they didn't do the Rock Ape thing, come down to have a little one-on-one. And, of course, the Frenchmen in black, they were tracked for 2 days by orangutans. And then when they finally met each other, they were curious about each other. And at some point, Lynn scratched himself, and then the orangutan was copying all the gestures. And finally, by the end, they gave him the primal finger salute, and the orangutan responded accordingly.
Back at you, I guess.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I'll move on to a question from JJ Oost, and this is for Don. In the jungle, how often did you have to cut out your landing zone with the rotor blades, or I guess, you know, with strings or whatever? How did flight behavior change, and how severe was the damage to the blades?
Well, in my case, usually the any cutting of foliage happened because we needed to get a little bit lower to the ground to get the rope ladder or the string down to the ground. And it's a very dangerous thing to try and do, because if you try to cut down too big a limb, you're going to take off part of your rotor blade and you'll crash in a heap right there in the jungle. And so my gunner and I, we learned, you know, after a while, and the pilots trusted us, that, you know, we knew what size of limb to take on and, you know, dent and damage the rotor blade, but not take a piece of it off. And I don't know about a number of times, but it happened several times that we did that to get low enough to be able to get the team hooked in and get out.
Yeah, well, Jim's got a great story about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a bright light mission where there was only two other guys and myself. We went on a 3-man team to pick up a body, and there was so many. There was like, they estimated 350 enemy coming after us, and we had to get on the ground and get to the body as fast as possible to try and get the body back out again. So when we ran in, we rappelled down, but when we got down at the bottom of the ropes, we weren't on the ground yet. So the chopper had to just keep lowering himself, and he he took all the skin off the bottom of his rotor. But he got it down and he chopped up all got it down on the ground. We unhooked. Then a cobra flew overhead and said, "Hey, follow me." So I went ahead and went up the hill, and we found the body, and we hooked him up and had him drop the ropes back down again. And we hooked up. I hooked the dead guy up. They hooked me up. I hooked the other guys up and told them to get us out of here. And as we were coming up on coming about treetop level, you can see the enemy. You can see them as you're up high enough on the trees. You can see through the spaces in the trees, and they're all shooting. But they're mainly they're trying to shoot at the helicopter to bring it down, because then they get everybody. So, but the bullets are whizzing by us. But we got out of there and we got the body back, and we none of us got hurt, except Chopper took a bunch of hits. But as we were coming up, one of the cool things was an A1E Sky Raider came right underneath me, about 50 feet below me. And the pilot just looked up at me and just kind of, gave me the little salute thing. And I just kind of waved to him, holding on to the dead guy and saying, get us out of here. So, but he was firing flechettes and keeping the bad guys down. And then I had another incident one time, was another bright light mission where I was going in to get a couple of pilots out of a jet crash, and they were both probably killed. But the jet hit the first hill, the second hill, and then landed on the third hill. And on the second hill, they had to get us out of there. So when the chopper came in, making the story short. So when the chopper had to come in, and I got the first half of the team out. That was Homer and two other guys. And so then there was only 4 of us left on the ground. So when the chopper came in, I had the gunships firing on both sides to shoot down, keep the enemy down. And the enemy were probably coming up from behind us as well, but I didn't want to take a chance on staying on the ground. They had to get us out of there. So when we got on the ladders and they came up, the chopper, as I was hooking up on the ladder, the friggin' chopper hit a tree. And I thought he got hit by an RPG, because I just had an RPG go off next to me and it peppered me. But anyway, so when he hit it, I was waiting for the chopper to fall down on me. But what he did is he hit a tree and knocked 2 feet of his rotor off, both rotors. It was go boom, boom, like that. And so, but he got us up out of there, and I unhooked from the ladder, climbed up inside, and I talked to the pilot and told him, hey, look down there. So he looked down, you could see the pattern. It was an enemy, actually it turned out to be a hospital, an enemy hospital for people getting injured on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. So, but anyway, I touch on that. I think one of your other questions was, like if you had any experience with APCs, enemy APCs. So when that question comes up, I'll go in a little bit further on this one. But anyway, they got us out of there. But the chopper made it back. He vibrated a lot, but he lost 2 feet of both ends of his rotor.
Oh, that's
I was real lucky. It was 2 feet off of each end, because we only lost one side due to come down, because it would have vibrated way too much.
Yeah.
An experience you don't want to go through.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
we had a 3-ship LZ, and they started receiving fire in the LZ, and one of the pilots got up too close to the bird in front of him and took his tail rotor off, and basically all 3 aircraft ended up in the LZ, and we had to go recover them all. But it was that trying to hit your rotor with things can end up very badly, if you aren't lucky.
Wow.
I have a buddy, George Snyder. I don't know if anybody knows him. He's a chopper pilot. He used to fly out of CCN, but he was teaching some guys, they were flying a formation, and when the other chopper came up and the rotor came right through the cockpit and hit the pilot and killed the pilot. George had to catch it, and he got it down on the ground. But his rotor was okay, and the other guy, I don't know what happened. I think that chopper crashed.
Yeah, probably if he came through the cockpit and killed somebody, he probably crashed.
God.
Well, you had Lynn Black, where the last Jolly Green to get in, actually hovered into the jungle to hide from the enemy ground fire. And that was the only way they got out. He hovered there 15 minutes or so. They finally got the whole team aboard. Then when he lifted out, they had enough fuel left to go over a couple mountaintops. And then he had to crash because they had been hit with B-40s and everything else.
Yeah, that's amazing to hear all those stories and things like that. It's incredible what some of these air crews are going through to keep that aircraft flying. I'm sure that's a lot of pressure on them to get the team out.
That's why we love our rotor heads.
And these guys are in their sort of early to mid-20s, right? So they're kids, really, compared to us.
Yeah, most of the aircraft commanders, by the time they got promoted to aircraft commander, were pretty phenomenal pilots, and they just had, ice water in their veins. I mean, they just cool, calm. I mean, it still amazes me how they could do that. I mean, the door gunners, we could shoot back and stuff, but, the pilot and co-pilot, they just sit there a lot of times oblivious to what's going on behind them except for the sound, and flying that aircraft and, keeping it all together.
All right, I'm going to go on to the question, just in the interest of time, that Sebastian asked. He says, We have NVA armored vehicles like PT-76 tanks and BTR-40 APCs in the game. Did you personally encounter them in Southeast Asia?
Well, I'll take that one. I'll continue that other mission. When we got on the ground, what happened was that jet was trying to drop a bomb on a bridge. And what happened, he was a little bit long. And when he came up, he caught a 51 caliber and he crashed from the first hill, second hill, to landed on the third hill. And the reason we had to get out of there is there was 6 truckloads of enemy and personnel carriers in the front and in the back, armored cars. And they were coming up across the bridge and coming up after us. They estimated over 350 enemy. So when they were coming up the hill after us, that was the experience that I had with them coming up. I could hear them coming up the Ho Chi Minh Trail, but I didn't think a whole bunch of it. What happened is when I first got off the first hill and was walking down this little valley up to the second hill, I found 3 enemy on my right side. And one had his weapon on me. The other 2, I couldn't tell if they had weapons or not. But I just took my gun and said, D, to get out of there, Dee, and tell them to get out of there. And they left. And then it was only about 20 minutes later, these guys were all over us. So that's why we had to get out of there, because my guess is they were coming up from behind us as well. They were all over that hill. And it turned out to be a hospital. And when DPA went in there, Stony Beach, I was talking to the guy, I drew him a map and told him the Vietnamese were looking for their own people. So I drew a map and told him, hey, look in this area. This is where the battle was. And when I talked to him the next day, he said, he goes, yeah, we found 127 remains and we're still missing over 100 just that were left right there on the hill. So there's no telling how many died afterwards. So we really don't know how many people were actually in that battle, but there was a lot of people there.
Wow. Yeah, that was a mission where you could hear them coming with the trucks with more people too. Yeah,
you can hear them coming.
Yeah, I got a real good friend here in Eugene that was on A322, which was about 16 kilometers from Kosovo and the southern headquarters on the Cambodian border. And he said at night, they'd see over in Cambodia, they'd see convoys of trucks, 150 trucks or so coming down the road with their headlights on, not even taking security. And they'd call an RT strike in them. All the lights would go out. The RT strike would get done. And about 10 minutes later, the headlights would come back on and away they'd go. And that camp, they received 5,000 incoming mortar rounds and rocket rounds. And so they were going to give them an award. And none of the brass from Saigon wanted to go out there because it was so dangerous. I mean, air crew went in there. You didn't land. You just threw whatever stuff or people had to get off, and you kept on going because you were going to receive fire from them. And so by the time one of them got enough nerve to go out and present him the award for receiving 5,000 rounds, they had received 10,000 incoming rounds. And they spent their whole time underground in bunkers most of the time. But, that just gives you an idea of what it was like in the border camps along the Cambodian. I assume the Laotian border was much the same from what I've read.
I remember at the SAW meeting talking to one of the SOG guys there, and he was saying he was the guy that found the tank tracks near Lang Vei before the battle and reported it, and the intelligence disbelieved and said they thought it must be a bulldozer.
Yeah, it was George Sternberg with ST Oregon.
That's right.
Oh, yeah, George.
Yeah, so he came across PT-76 tank tracks in the bush.
My pilot and platoon leader, after he left the 195th, went to Fort Walters to teach. And then he came back at the end of 71 and was flying Cobras down along in the 3 Corps area. And he saw a column of NVA tanks coming down Highway 13, and he called it in and reported it. And CNC didn't want to believe him. They said, no, they have to be ARVN tanks. It's impossible to be NVA tanks. And they wanted him to go down and take a look at it. He said, no, and unfortunately, he flew back to rearm and refuel. And when he was coming back on station, he saw a column of smoke coming up out of the air. And they talked this Loach driver to go down and take a look, and he got shot down and was killed. But it was a case of, we'd report what was going on, and the higher ups wouldn't believe us.
It seems like a common theme that I've heard quite a bit just reading the different books that I have. And
Ken, I know you sent me some photos before of NVA tanks. Could you tell us about those?
I'm sorry, say again?
You sent me photos before of NVA tanks. I think they were taken by a friend of yours just after the Easter uprising in Hue.
Oh yeah, that was out of SOG though. That's around Easter offensive. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So that was later on, and they were main battle tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, Pat Watkins, when he was up on Oscar 8 in June, I think it was June of '68, the night that he was so close to the NVA that after they got done with the trail watch, the NVA came up to the little people and said, hey, it's your turn for guard duty. And they had been on a trail watch for over 4 hours, nothing but tanks, bulldozers, and he identified what the specific tanks were because he knew them from his prior experience. And, oh, my God, yeah, all kinds of – and that was June of '68, after TET, but it was through Oscar 8.
So it's fair to say there was plenty of NVA armor around. It was just not being deployed into battle very often.
Well, yeah, and they really got their nose bloodied at Lang Veg. That was the first time they used them, and ineffectively. And they didn't use it too many times thereafter. There's always a couple of stories where the tanks or some kind of a combination of tank troop carrier would come in, and I don't recall those specifics, but they were there. And the guys that were up at A101 at Lang Veg, they could give you direct experiences on that. I think they had 11 tanks. I
think we're on to session 3, looking at the clock. So I'm going to jump straight in with the big Finnish question. We've had a team of Finnish Army, Finnish Defence Force guys testing the game for us this last week, and they're excellent soldiers. I know that from lots of friends in the team who are Finns, and they're always very dependable in the game when you're in a firefight. And they were saying that there's a very special interest, of course, in Major Larry Thorne, who served in the Special Forces in Vietnam. And he went missing on the first mission of Operation Shining Brass, the sort of beginning of SOG operations over the fence. And did you ever hear mention of him in country? And if so, how? And I guess we'll start with Ken.
Well, I think everyone heard of Larry Thorne, especially if you were in 10th Group ever. My personal experiences, of course, heard from him. And as we've talked earlier, when I was in Finland with NATO and went ahead and did a talk on Larry Thorne there and found out that he really is quite a national hero in Finland from his experiences and service fighting the Soviets during the Second World War, and then continuing that fight through the war, and then of course coming to the United States. But when I was there the second time, his remains had been found and recovered, and the Finnish officers that I was with there at their academy said, hey, would you like to see all his kit that was returned, his Swedish K, his other equipment. And so, again, my only experience was the legacy and working with the Finns And then friends who served with him. I mentioned to you, one of my friends here in town actually went through training with him. But yeah, quite a legend. I'm sure some of you other guys have perhaps personal experiences with him.
Yeah, and I think the fact that he's as revered in special forces as he is in Finland in the United States speaks volumes to the kind of person that he was and the kind of warrior for freedom that he was. He's been inducted into the Special Forces Legion of Honor and the regiment. And, I think that speaks to well. I never had a chance to serve with him and didn't find out about him until after I left Vietnam. But, I think in all our hearts, he's definitely a legend.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, guys. This next question is from a Marine Raider who served in Iraq, Jason Dilly. And he asked, what medical equipment did you carry on missions?
I carried those little cans of albumin. I carried one of those. They're just a little blood expander. They're not very helpful. But I carried a lot of belly bandages and that sort of thing. I just kind of piled them up, and some cravats because you can use them for tying splints if you have to, that sort of thing. Didn't carry a whole bunch of medical stuff with us because, a lot of times they're going to try and get you out of there as fast as possible. All you want to do is stop any bleeding. That's it. Hold any tissues in that are jumping out,
I think all of us, carried our own kit. We all carried our own IV solution, had that ready. We all had our own morphine, epinephrine, and a lot of bandages. But that was, primary for immediate.
How likely were you to get dehydrated or overheated on missions? I mean, troops serving in Afghan, for example, heat stroke was really, really common. But what about in the jungles of Southeast Asia?
I sweat like a stuffed pig when I was over there, but it's so humid, and you're in triple canopy, so it's pretty. But I brought one can. Usually a mission was a 5-day mission. A lot of times they only lasted 2 or 3 days, but I carried 5 canteens of water, and that was it. Towards the end there, I had a 5-quart bladder in my pack, and I stuck a little tube and I brought it around over here, and I could just sit against a tree and squirt it into my mouth. Now that was it.
So did you invent the camelback then, or was that?
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, but I think somebody else probably came up with the same idea. But yeah, no, we had that. I had a little surgical tubing on it, and I just kind of folded it in half and put a little safety pin on it, and that was it. Worked good.
Yeah, I carried water, but I also had a small indigenous poncho. I mean, it seemed like whenever I went out, it rained. So sometime almost every day it was going to rain on me, so I could set that up. I could catch water. I took a little plastic bag out of one of the rations and cut it off, and I made a little scoop out of that I could pour the water into my canteen. But with the medical gear that we talked about a minute ago, I was probably not one of the most popular 1-0s because I made my teams train with the medical gear, particularly the IVs. And they freaked out the first time I got them together, and I said, this is what we're going to do. I've got some needles from the dispensary, and we're all going to practice giving an IV. And they freaked out over that. But I told them, I said, look, if I get hit, I don't want the first time you're trying to give an IV to be on me in combat. I want you to know what you're doing before then. So let's develop a little muscle memory here and where to put that thing. And then we'll not swap needles, but we'll swap. You'll get a different partner, and, we'll give you some experience on the team. And we would do that every couple of months just to stay sharp, tourniquet, stopping bleeding. We'd have the medics come over and work with us some, and just, the common kinds of injuries that we were going to have, give them a little experience with that. And then, we all had morphine some other stuff to keep us awake and things like that.
Okay, so I guess moving on to the questions, because I asked you guys yesterday to have a think of some questions for each other. And Dick, you had one about Marble Mountain. Do you want to ask that?
Yeah, I was curious, particularly with Tilt and Ken, since they were there, stationed there. I was told it was a policy. Maybe they just told me that so I wouldn't complain, but that, after so many missions, you had to take your turn up on one of the combat outposts on Marble Mountain. So you'd go up there and stay a week or so you could have a little R&R and a little rest, and you would have those shoot back targets that you could sharpen your skills on, particularly at night. So I was wondering if you guys had an opportunity to go up there and spend a little time there.
Tilt?
Yeah, we went up a few times, and a couple times it was punishment, because we had a couple of run-ins with a couple of ramps, and usually we would get a lift from the King Bees because we had a good rapport with the King Bees, and they would take our team up. Sometimes they even took two transports, but there was one time in April of 69 when we had to walk up. And on that walk up, Sal, my 01, was training Hung, one of our young guys, really sharp. We had been training him as a medic and as an interpreter in his spare time. And on this mission, it turned out to be a mission because we went up. During the day, the Viet Cong had come back and put out several different booby traps, including a claymore. And had I been running point, I would have been fertilizer right there. Somehow they saw it, and I forget, I want to say close to a dozen. Everything from hand grenades to toe poppers. And again, I don't know how they did it because Sal was training Hung, and they saw each thing. We didn't get up to the top of the mountain until after dark. It took us that long, but they did it, and just the routine assignment. And a lot of times in my second tour of duty, we were so busy running that we didn't get sent up there, but they always try to have at least one recon team up there based on what happened August 23rd. Because had we not had Larry Trimble with his recon team up there, there would have been more casualties that night.
We, same policy continued during my time of having one team up there, and it was a rotational duty. Everybody, was in some kind of a duty roster for it, depending on your mission cycle and support cycle. But people who lived on the other side weren't friendly at all. They were really bad, and so there were a lot of engagements with them, and so there was no shortage really of contacts. When you had your tour of duty, you would have something happen.
Well, it makes me feel better that you guys say there was a policy and people did rotate. It wasn't just my team. So,
yeah. Well, the only good night was when Tony Dodge was up there with his team. And Tony, I mentioned to you guys, was Sante Raider, and called in. It was a bad engagement. And Tony called in fire, said, I need aircraft. And we were able to get a Cobra up. And never before could we ever bring air in because of the village on the other side. And, but that was approved. And then later with Tony, I remember the radio, I was standing by the radio, and he said, they wanted him to cease fire, wherever the camp commander was for whatever reason. And then all I heard was Tony in his real slow drawl. He said, identified himself. And he said, I'll stop shooting at the bottom of the hill when the bottom of the hill stopped shooting at me. And then the firefight continued again. A great soldier.
Yeah, I was up there with RT Michigan. Eldon Bargewell was my 1-1, and it was a mountain yard team. And we've been up there several days, and one of the guys came to us and said, that, a couple of us want to go down to the village. And I could see Bargewell shaking his head, no, we don't want that. But finally we agreed that, it had to be 3 of them. They had to take a radio with them. They had to promise that they wouldn't get in trouble, all this kind of stuff. So they left. They'd been gone about 20 minutes. We heard a couple of gunshots. Call them on the radio right quick. No problem, no VC. And shortly they came back up on the mountain, and they were carrying something. They had a sandbag. But I'm looking at the sandbag and something's dripping out of it. And I thought, that's blood dripping out of the sandbag. So all the rest of them gathered around, and, one of them dumped the contents of the sandbag on the ground. It was the monk's dog. They had gone down to the pagoda where the monks live, and they had shot their dog, put it in the sandbag, and brought it back up. So it was quite a little feast that night. So, but they didn't get in trouble, they said.
It was a communist dog anyway.
It probably was.
Oh, yeah.
It probably was.
Yeah, the Buddhist monks were communist sympathizers, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the indigenous people knew that, so they went and made a meal out of it.
Well, thanks, Dick, and guys, for your stories of Marble Mountain. Dick, you also had a question about BDAs, I think.
Yeah, I was just curious if any of you had gone in on a bomb damage assessment, just right after a B-52 strike. If so, what was your experience? What was it like for you when you got off the aircraft?
I didn't go in on one, but I inserted a team on one. And it was a B-52 strike on the Coochie tunnels. And we put them in and at one end of it, and they ran down to the other end. About an hour later, we went and got them. And they went in, and they had pretty clean uniforms on and everything. And when they came out, they would look like they'd had dirt dumped all over them, because it was just, the ground was all jumbled up, and they were exhausted. And, they had a prisoner with them, and they told they could have brought a lot more prisoners, but they couldn't handle them. And there were, the Viet Cong were walking around in a daze, bleeding from their ears and their nose, and picked them up. And, from that experience, it looked like a B-52 strike BDA was, quite an experience.
I never ran it. I just got shot out of one. We were trying to get in and got shot out. So the old theory was it should be easy to do BDA. That was the theory, because they said everybody, like your case, Don, the enemy would be walking dazed and confused. But other people had experiences when the communists, whether NVA or Viet Cong, they were pissed. And when
like Jerry Mad Dog
you had your hands full. And this one, we got shot out. So,
yeah, well, Jerry Mad Dog Schreiber got shot out when they did their BDA on Kosovo, and those guys, Colonel Trabu said he's convinced that they were in concrete bunkers there, because the aircraft got down about 20 feet off the ground before they started firing. And it was a nasty, nasty day, prairie fire day.
Just another day in SOG.
Yeah. I only did one, but it was, it was not pleasant. When you got off the aircraft, you couldn't move with, like you were saying, with the craters everywhere, dirt was everywhere, trees were laying all over the place, limbs, rocks. To just try to move forward, was a real pain. And then, the people we met were not happy. They were not happy at all. And they were not shy about letting us know that they were not happy about what had happened to them. So, yeah, I didn't care for those. I was glad I didn't have to do another one.
I had one target that we were going in on, and we were at the launch site, and the intel increased significantly. And before we even launched, they pulled an arc light in on the target and canceled the mission. After that, it was index, if you would. It was taken off the list, and we didn't even go in for the BDA, but that was the closest.
Another question from Dick was around the use of CS gas or riot gas, and what experience you guys have with it.
I use CS gas, powder CS in the little. I had a little canister with it, and I used it for when the dogs were coming after me, and I just sprayed it around our trail. But I don't know if it worked or not. We didn't have any problems with the dogs after that, but they could have been led in a different direction for all I know. That was the only time I ever used it. We did have a guy one time, Calvin Hoyt. We were in Saigon. He was having dinner, and his pistol fell out on the floor. And so the white mice, what do you call those guys? The Quan, the
QC
police, they came over and tried to confiscate his pistol. And he just raised a big squawk about it. They finally went in, they got the pistol back, and they went over the top of the police department, and they dropped a couple of cases of CS powdered gas on top of the place. So, and just let me know, they couldn't do much after that. But I guess after the first good rain, it was probably okay. I don't know.
Wow.
Get his pistol back.
My experience with CS gas was during the May offensive. The NVA and BC got into Saigon, and we had quite a few several days getting them out. And every evening, we'd be flying back over Saigon, and people had just opened up on us like crazy, and they were reluctant to let us shoot back because, we'd hurt more casualties, do more damage than good from some guy standing out and hosing off a few at us. And so one evening we're coming back, and one of the crew chiefs got a little upset about the whole deal, and he had a CS grenade. So he dropped it in the area of the traffic circle in Saigon. And it was quite a sight to watch from the air as people were running all over the place and unasked in the traffic circle in downtown Saigon.
No, we had a powdered mace and black pepper that we always carried, and for the dogs. And we used it too many times. And usually it worked, like Jim said. Once it got on the nose, if it was relatively fresh, it had an impact. Although it's not as good as Doug Letourneau's method, which is the 22 silencer, just to shoot the dog. That's my favorite dog story, by the way. But in terms of a strategic effort, on Operation Tailwind, the last day, the team on the ground was about to get overrun. They had extracted some of the personnel, and Covey had warned them about huge waves just of NVA coming at them. And the way they broke it was first a SPAD piloted by Tom Stump came in, made gun runs, and then they followed up with CS gas that caused a lot of confusion within the NVA ranks. So when the last helicopter came in to pick up Mike Rose, Gene McCarley, and the rest of the remainder team, as well as all the intel documents that they had gathered, they put it on a helicopter, and there were NVA coming out of the gas, confused. And they, like Gene McCarley, thought they were so close they could have thrown a hand grenade into that CH-53 Delta model. But they were confused enough or disoriented enough from the gas that it gave them enough time to get off the ground. And of course, when the helicopter was extracting, the Marine door gunner got shot in the neck, and Mike was able to keep him alive, bring him back.
Until maybe I could ask you a question. It's just a little different, but
Yeah.
I mean, just quickly, if you had to choose between your favorite dogs or leeches, which one would you pick?
We'll take the dogs every day. Those damn leeches. They were clearly NVA Viacom trained leeches. You know, one of my most embarrassing stories, Lynn has detailed it more in his book, but on Christmas Day when we were dealing with the NVA on a target, at one point my pants were down because the had leeches gone for Mr. Happy. And Lynn kind of described that scenario better than I did. I was just too embarrassed, actually.
Yeah, you know, you don't even know you got leeches on you half the time, you know. You'll be sitting like, I remember I'd lean back and all of a sudden I'd feel really cold on my back or something, or on my leg or something. And then somebody will look at it, it's all blood because a leech got so fat, and you lean back, you pop them, and you get all this blood all over you. That's the only time I knew when I had leeches on me. Even though I taped up my pants and taped up everything, and it didn't help that much sometimes.
I think those NVA leeches went to the NVA Sapper School of Training just to come get us.
Yeah,
exactly. That's why they're naked.
No matter how much repellent you put on or how tight you taped your trousers and boots or tucked your shirt in, they were there. Absolutely.
I think they go up your sleeve or they go down your neck, because I was opened up here, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, when we were doing the May offensive with the 9th Division, we'd land on a rice paddy road, and you know the infantry would come sloshing out of the rice paddy and get on a helicopter to go to the next lift. And the first thing they'd do is they'd pull up their shirt and pants and everything and start picking leeches off of each other. And you know, some of the leeches would be 3, 4, 5 inches long. They're so full of blood from sucking on them.
Our Vietnamese friend Nguyen has just posted that the PAVN and NLF, the Viet Cong, would use salt water to get the leeches off their bodies. So,
will a leech shrivel up if you put salt on them? I don't know, like a slug?
It's what he's saying. So
yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So, Rob, you got snakes in your scenarios. Why don't you throw a few dozen leeches in on the lads also?
We could do that. On the question of snakes, did you guys come across them? I mean, I think there's something like 126 species of venomous snake in Vietnam. There aren't any safe ones. How frequently would they appear during, because you guys were sleeping on the ground, right? So how frequently would you come across a snake on a patrol?
I don't remember coming across a snake when I was in SOG, but when I was on the A-team one time, I sat down leaning against a tree to take a break, and I had a little pit viper come out between my legs. I sat on him, and he came out between my legs and took off. That was about the only one I came across. Didn't come after me or anything.
I just had a cobra that I almost stepped on until my interpreter saw it and smashed it with his rifle. And bamboo viper and a hide site. That was it. Just 2.
Yeah, I had a cobra. I was looking down at about 20 NVA. I was watching them, and I saw something move out of the corner of my eye. And it was he was probably 7 feet or so long.
Whoa.
I don't know where he was going, you know, but I couldn't move because I didn't want those guys to detect me and open up on me. I got the cobra crawling across in front of me. So I was just real still. He never looked. He just kept going right on by me. That would have messed my whole day up. And I had a team member we had stopped for a security halt, and he went down and all of a sudden jumped about 5 feet in the air. He had just went down right next to a banded crate. And, you know, if it had hit him, you couldn't have got him out in time. I mean, we were too far out. And, you know, the banded crates are nocturnal feeders anyway. They usually don't give you much problem in the daytime, but yeah, that was close. If he had actually sat on him, thing with an elder.
Yeah, we had a few. Our point man. There were several times, and the one I remember the most was the pit viper. You know, those little ones, and they pointed them out so each one of us, as we went past it, would see it to make sure it stayed there. You know, not to get in our way. So I'm not knowledgeable about snakes. A snake is a snake, and we saw several. But again, our little people, they're much more keen and attuned to it than I was, and that's why we paid them the big bucks, man. They kept us out of ambushes and snakes. Oh,
yeah. My snake story is we had inserted a team, and it was 2 indigenous, and 1-0 was brand new. It was like his first or second team run as a 1-0, and we hadn't even got out of the area, and he called and said we needed to come get him, and said they were moving down a trail, and he said there was a 50-foot python in the trees over the trail, and I'm convinced that was an exaggeration because I don't think they get that big, you know, maybe 10, 12, 15 feet. But anyway, the Cambods wouldn't go down the trail any further. They refused to go on. And so they were compromised by a snake. We had to go back and extract them and get them out. And, you know, I think the Cambods, I'm not sure, but I thought it was probably their lack of confidence in the new 1-0 they were running with more than the snake, because
the yards would have turned it into a lunch.
Yeah. Well, and I wonder why the Cambods didn't too. They, you know, seem to like those kind of delicacies.
I think George at Fob 4 was pretty big, Ken.
Yeah, we had at the launch site at Fubai, the mascot up there was George, the rock python. And of course, everyone got their picture taken with George, and we'd play with them and screw with them. And they'd have a chicken tied to a string and a stake, and then see how long it would take to George to finally get up enough courage to go after the chicken. The chicken would hit him in the nose. Snake would go back, but he was the mascot there. I think Till probably left him there for us, you know, to be in Fubai.
No. I stayed away from those things, man.
Was that a CCN you had the snake? George?
Yeah, that was at Fubai launch site.
Oh, yeah, because
we had FOB1 that got closed in January of '69, and then afterwards they had a launch site at Camp Eagle with 101st. And that's what Ken's talking about.
Yeah, when I was at CCC, Shepherd had a python there. He used to put it in the mortar pit, and they'd go downtown and get little pigs, and this one little pig would jump in the middle of it, kick him around, get comfortable, and go to sleep. And snake wouldn't eat him. So the pig actually grew up, got pretty big. He used to run around the compound.
Yeah, when I saw the picture of Gordon with you, Ken, and reminded me when I went on R&R to Bangkok, Thailand, I got a picture of about a 50-pound python around my neck, and I came back and shared that picture with all my friends, and they just think, you know, I was the weirdest guy in the world to even let that snake near me, let alone around my neck. And of course, I knew it was well fed. But so when I went back to Vietnam in 2006, we went down on a little tour of Bintry Island. And so walking up, and our little gal tour guide, we walked into this village, and they had a python in a cage there. And she's, "Come here, Don." And I knew exactly what she was going to do. And so they draped that around me, and I got another picture of a python around my neck and posted it on the website. And, you know, the guys think I'm just the weirdest guy in the world. because of my fascination with snakes. And, I mean, snakes are fine, but if they're on the ground, they need to be shot immediately. And in the Mike Force game, that's true also, because they will bite.
Well, they have good snakes, We got, I live in Arizona, and we got rattlesnakes and, what do they call those things? A lot of rattlesnakes around here. I come across a lot of them. But we got good snakes, too, like the bull snake and stuff. They go after the rattlesnake, so you don't want to hurt them.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That was a very entertaining discussion about snakes in Vietnam. It's good to know that they were there because we've put them in the game, and there's been several complaints because people don't like being bitten by them when they're crawling through the grass. Sam, could you, maybe we've got time if the guys are happy to just do a couple of final questions from the audience?
So I got a question from Jan Martinek, who wants to know, did any of you come across any other Warsaw Pact personnel or equipment such as Czech, Polish, Hungarian, or Romanian during your deployment? I'm sure sometimes you can't tell, but did any of you have experiences with that?
I know we had Czechs. We had Czech mercenaries working with the NVA because we had a few guys that were going out as snipers to try and catch them, but I don't know if they ever got them or not. What was it, Tilt? I think it was like, $10,000 if you got a Caucasian enemy or mercenary working for the NVA?
Wow.
I don't know.
I don't know if anybody
heard that. We witnessed a Russian resupply one night in Laos, and it was like around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, and the side of the jungle, like 2 mountains away, the side of this whole jungle just lit up. It looked like Broadway, and here comes a Russian aircraft doing an aerial resupply in Laos. Jeez. That was just our weirdest encounter with foreign equipment.
I think
we heard tanks and things like that, other missions, but that was the weirdest one.
Yeah, I think Bob Howard had a Russian helicopter pop up when he was on a mission one time.
Yeah, we had a Thunder Chicken gun team and insert slick Christmas Day 1967 get chased out of the tri-border area of Laos and Cambodia. They were going to do an insert, and a MiG aircraft came and convinced them to turn around and go back across the border. And they did that 2 days in a row. They tried to insert teams up there.
Hey, that can't be a good feeling.
Yeah, Pat Watkins tells a story of they had a recon team up in the DMZ, and they called the radio relay site at Hickory saying we're heading back to, they had a predetermined LZ, and they gave them a time on target, just say 1,300 hours. And they made better time, and they got to the designated area, which is before 1,300 hours. They could hear a helicopter already on the LZ. And they called back to Hickory, and Hickory said, oh no, the helicopter is en route. And they went out, it was a Russian helicopter.
Wow.
And they got, if that was me, I would have lit it up like a Christmas tree, but somehow they got out, and without getting the Russian helicopter. Just to imagine, the thought was that maybe the team would come out and just jump on the helicopter, and then they would have had the entire recon team. Although with weapons, I can't imagine how that would have panned out.
Yeah.
Dang, that's incredible.
Yeah. I got to get the details from Pat. I remember him telling us that. He said, when you get to LZ, make sure it's one of our helicopters, which we always did, of course.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we were playing in our game, the Oscar 8 mission, and I was with Don. And Don, do you want to tell what happened there?
Well, to start the mission with, I was a little bit overloaded, I guess, and I couldn't run. And so Rob or someone said, well, let's just go insert, it'll sort itself out. And the Oscar 8 mission, as you guys know who have been to the real Oscar 8, is not a mission you want to do where you can't move quickly. So I got off and I couldn't keep up. I just was walking and they were running off into the jungle. So I escaped out of the game to come back in and reload. Well, when I got back, they were right out of the base camp. And so I had on a mission before, I had not been able to get on the King, the aircraft, and got left in the LD. So I saw this helicopter, and so I ran up to it, and I was running around to the other side to make sure I got in the door, because they're only on the King, the 34, there's only on one door. And as I'm running up by the tail boom, I noticed there's a red star on it. And I went, oh shit. And I run around it, and the door was closed. So I run all the way around the Russian helicopter and back out into the bushes, and before anything happened to me. But, that was my enemy aircraft experience.
Okay, I have a question from Peacemaker, and he wants to know, what strategies did the indigenous people, both your team members and the local civilians, use to navigate the terrain? Did the locals ever mark trails or routes through the jungle like in some Polynesian cultures?
No, we just stayed off of all trails, so we never had to worry about that. We cross them, but never use them, only except in rare cases. I think, Jim, you may have had one time you used a trail in an emergency, right?
Trail and emergency, I can't. No. One time I was walking, we were getting ready to cross the trail. We didn't know the trail was there. All of a sudden we heard the enemy coming, and we just got down. But heck, we were only like 3 feet away from the trail, but there was such dense jungle you couldn't see it. And the enemy just walked right by us. And we were going to jump up and try and get him. We had one guy, one of our yards, his name was Nut, and we called him Nut. But he was going to jump up and try and get the guy and go, whoa, get back down. And I was strap hanging on that team. It was Joe Van Diver and I. And we didn't know if there was a larger element behind it. So you might jump out and grab that guy and kill the other two guys. The next thing you know, you got a couple hundred people on you. So we just let them walk by.
Same thing. No trails. Didn't use them. Saw them, but avoided them.
Yeah, they're scary to walk on a trail.
Okay.
No, there's one guy who did it though with RT Cobra, with Pat Eddington. He looked Asian. He had Chu Hoi team, all North Vietnamese that came to our side. And they were so familiar with the NVA that they could literally walk down the trails. They knew the codes, pass them back and forth to each other. And they just assumed that Pat was just Chinese because he was so tall compared to most South Vietnamese or Vietnamese in general. But he told stories about walking down the trails, and they would just wave to the guys and just walk on by because they were all dressed as NVA. They all had AK-47s. And that's what I wanted. I wanted an all NVA team, but somehow my Caucasian face would betray me, so we couldn't walk the trails.
Yeah, the Roadrunner platoon, Delta employed. They were in NVA uniforms, and that's where they got their nickname Roadrunners. Was they explicitly were on the trail to gather intelligence and capture prisoners, but they had documents for the area and weapons and full legitimate NVA uniforms for the area they were in.
We had Glenn Umora at CCC, and he's Hawaiian. He can almost pass he can pass for Asian, and he was being chased by the NVA one time, and he walked right through a parade field where they're having all the enemy were all in lines and stuff. He just walked right by them, just right behind them all, and just kept walking. Nobody suspected him, and he just walked right on out and got away from the bad guys.
I've never heard that one. That's pucker factor 10, Jim, I think.
Yeah, but he figured he'd give it a shot. He kind of stumbled into it, didn't know they were there.
And just kept walking very calmly.
Yeah, I wish Glenn was still with us, but yeah, he was a crazy guy.
I think we're going to have to wrap up because we've gone on quite a long time. I'm going to, if you don't mind, well, first of all, I say thank you all, guys. I've got one more question. Thank you for coming in today and tonight and sharing your stories with everyone. I think they've all been showing their gratitude in the chat. We've been monitoring, and everyone's would like to pass on their warmest regards to you guys, and thank you for your time. The question I wanted to ask Dick in particular, it's to all of you, but it's based on a conversation I was having with Dick the other day, because he came and watched one of our missions on Friday with Paul LaFrance, who's also a 1-0. Ken's watched a mission with your friends. Don has played in missions. Tilt's been in and watched a mission. We've got to get you in sometime soon, Jim, to have a look as well. But the question really to Dick is, and to the others, but starting with Dick, is, having experienced the missions and seen them, how does it make you feel when experiencing a video game, and does it bring back memories?
Yeah, I mentioned to you about, going on the one. There was a little confusion at the beginning. I'd never seen the game, didn't know anything about it. So there was a little confusion for me at the beginning because I wasn't quite sure what was happening. And then all of a sudden we were headed to the helicopter, to fly out. But now I'm hearing that whine. I'm hearing that rotor turning. By the time I got on the helicopter, I was smelling JP4. I could feel the vibration of the helicopter. And I noticed, my arousal level started going up a little bit. I was starting to get a little pumped, even though I wasn't a player. I didn't have a gun, but I figured I could get one out there someplace if I needed it. So I was excited. And then we flew out to the area, and we, offloaded, and I get into a mindset, when I leave the skid or when I go out the plane door, I'm in and I'm coming for you. Be no doubt in your mind, I'm coming after you. And I found myself going there. I'm going after the bad guys. I see us start moving. I get a little nervous because I'm thinking, man, if we keep moving this fast, we're going to run right up on top of them. And then, Rob came in and talked about the game and some things like that. Plus, I realized I was in very different terrain than what I was used to. So I'll shorten it some, but I was excited about it, fascinated with how everything was working. When we eventually got to the building and the firefight really intensified, I could feel my arousal level go up there with the tracers, the explosions, everything that was going on. I was fascinated with the detail of the white phosphorus grenades, watching them explode and thinking, they throw all that stuff out like that. That's pretty cool to get that detail in the game. Eventually we got to, we were going to an extraction LZ, and they said, it's another 1,800 meters. And I thought, no. I mean, we're in heavy contact. We're not going another 1,800 meters. I mean, we're out in the open already. So we need to do something. So that I found that kind of irritated me. And I've had that experience before where I need to be talking to Cubby. So we're not going way out there. And then they said, well, your air support's coming in. And it's a pink team. You got that little bumblebee buzzing around up there with a Cobra back in the air. And I'm thinking, I'm used to, on a prayer fire emergency, I'm going to have, 4 to 6 gun ships. I'm going to have two or three A1Es, a couple of F4s. I mean, I'm going to have something I can do some damage with and suppress this fire so we can get out. And I got a pink team. So I wasn't happy about that. But overall, I mentioned to Rob that, if if you can create a story through programming, through writing, through the visual effects, that's powerful enough to cause you to smell things that are not there, like JP4. In the mission where we were in the RON and the bad guys are walking, I could smell them. I could smell what they had for their Last Supper. And, I was getting these other sensory experiences coming out of the game. So I thought that was pretty cool. So I'm looking forward to getting into it more, digging deeper, avoiding the snakes, and, learning how to play.
We can't wait to have you come into the game, Dick, and and you can show us how to do it.
I don't know that I know how to do it, but I can have fun, because I noticed that in the game, if they get you, they knock you down. If you've got a medic close by, he can have you back on your feet and walking. It's like some steaks. It's like a steak that you see people order every once in a while. You look on the plate and you think, man, 15 minutes and a good vet, I could have that joker walking again. So have a good medic, he can get you back on your feet.
How about the other guys who've seen the missions? Any feelings that came from watching them?
Well, the one I saw, Rob, the insert, like Dick just said, that insert, man, my adrenaline was picking up, absolutely. And then when they got out of the helicopters, it's like, man, there's not enough jungle here. And they had to haul ass to get to the jungle. So that was just a little bit too realistic. But, my heartbeat was up on that one. That's what I remember the most from that, because it's just like, welcome to the jungle, baby.
Yeah, I think I had the same observation Tilt did when I got out. I said, hey, we are in the open. What concerned me, of course, then start watching our movements was the time distance factor, moving a lot faster than I ever moved or would want to move.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then getting close to the target area for a Mobile, having contacts before it in close proximity, I'm thinking, it's time to call in some fire. I don't think we're going to be able to sit down there and be able to conduct that mission. So it really causes you to think, to weigh the decisions that you've got to make. So the realism, I think, is great. I thought the engagement by the bad guys was extremely good. I didn't see the first shots coming at all. I couldn't see where they were. And so it was played very realistically. And as I mentioned before, I've got a whole lot to learn to be able to participate realistically. But I think you guys have done a great job. Makes you think.
And I think you had if I could add one more thing, the potential of a game like this. And I think you hear some of it coming from us CCN guys. We're used to that terrain, but here's an opportunity to learn what it was like where Don was or where Jim was. With a different terrain, different tactics, moving differently. So you can play in all these environments. And if you put that into the real world, you could have the different environments set up that the teams are targeted toward, and you could play, you could do the different things under different constraints and practice and get better before you have to go in and do it for real. So, there are a lot of opportunities for this game besides just having fun with it.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, if I might add, I echo the same thing that you guys said. When I ran the first mission with them was the bright light mission, and going in and recovering the pilot. And when I got out after that mission, I was just exhausted. It was almost like doing an actual mission, the way your adrenaline's up and everything, and then you're on the helicopter and it's all done, and you come back and sit down, and a few minutes later you start getting that spent feeling where you're coming off the adrenaline. And that's what amazed me about it, was the look of the weapons, the sound of the weapons, the way the weapons operate. It's very realistic for a video game. The possibilities I see are amazing. I know Sam and I and a couple of friends of his ran the Ma Bell mission one night, and we tried to do it a little bit more recon team, where we used only hand signals and moved slowly, and it was we didn't have enough people in the camp to hold everybody off. That kind of got sour, but and I think we got 5 seconds of tape, off the wire. But the game allows you to play it differently, and I think that's the genius part of it. Was also watching some of the beta team guys play the game, and they don't know anything about SOG, and they're running trails, and I'm going, they're going to get ambushed, and yep, they got ambushed, and so it offers a lot of flexibility, for people to develop it and take it to new levels.
I personally ran a mission the other night where normally I'm team leader, and this time the team leader was a player called Controlled Pairs. We'll be able to see his video of the game when it comes out after release. And I have to say, he's involved in some way with Special Forces and he's clearly been trained as a team leader. And he taught me, I was like a rookie, and I've been playing this game 10 years. But to play with somebody that's had that kind of training, it was humbling. It was humbling. He had complete control of the team at all times. He knew where everybody was. He knew what everybody was doing. He gave us a complete and rapid and concise briefing at the beginning, and a debrief at the end. And just the way he, you guys, you would have been trained in this way with 1-0 school, I guess. But to run with somebody that has that capability and that experience to manage and run the team was just mind-blowing for me. And even after 10 years of playing Armour, to suddenly have an experience like that is like an epiphany in terms of, just to see what the power of a great team leader is, on the ground, in contact, and how he can get you out of the shit, basically. So hats off to you all, gents, because that's what you've all done for real. And I think we'll probably wrap it up there. I'm going to say again, thank you very much for all your time tonight. And what we'll do when everybody's drifted off is we'll just open up the session like we did last time, and everybody that's in the audience can come in and have a chat with us. And we'll keep going for about another half an hour or so. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you so much. And I really look forward to our next sessions and getting you into game. And we'll try and get Tilt and Jim somehow into the game. If not before, we'll do it at SOAR because we'll bring some laptops over. But hopefully sooner.
Yeah, I've never played games on a computer, so I have no idea.
Yeah, I'm as dumb as I look when it comes to computers too, so it'll be challenging more ways than one, Rob.
Yeah, Rob, I was lucky. I was a strap hanger, and the 1-0 there, Caleb, and 1-1 Shannon guided me. As I say, I've never played a game like this before, but it's absolutely amazing what you all have done for the realism and authenticity. So thank you very much.